how we do the discovery for ASM purposes, or for um, attack surface management purposes. So joining you here today, it's me, Jorge Montiel. I'm pre-sales engineer here based in EMEA, and I have my colleague as well, Tom. So Tom, if you can quickly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hey, all great to be here today. Tom Emilio, Principal Sales Engineer here at Red Sift, helping lead up SEs on the North America team.
All right, thank you, Tom. So basically we're here because so far we've done a few sessions around our ASM offering, what kind of value you can get out of it in terms of features. And we've also talked about the certificates module of the solution. So today the purpose is to probably take a step back into how it is that we do the discovery, and more specifically, the concept of identities within our solution. So for that purpose, if you haven't seen those recordings, then we can share those with you after the session as well, if you let us know, so that you can have a look at those as well. But for today's session, we're going to start off with Tom. We're going to try to do everything live demo, time permits. But off we go now. And Tom, if you would like to start, please, I'll pass it on to you.
Cool. All right, perfect. Let's do it. Share my screen here. All right. So to set the stage here, as we're going through the demo, in this left-hand corner, this is the name of the account I'm in. I'm going to be tabbing in between two. So just keep an eye on ASM Certs demo. I'll make that clear when I'm in that account. And then we're in the JM demo. I'll make that clear as well. So really what we wanted to do here, and Jorge did a good job of just setting the stage. I mean, we've done a lot of webinars on the configuration of your environment and certificates, but we want to show you how our ASM solution ultimately finds all of these different public-facing, assets in your estate, in your environment. So I'll show you how we do that. So just by adding one domain to our ASM solution, that will kick off a feature on our platform called identity monitoring. So I'm still in this JM demo, right? I just added one domain, redsift.com. So I come over here to identity monitoring. We're not going to see anything in here yet. We wanted to do this live, so we created an additional account. So now I'm switching. Okay, so back over to this ASM Certs demo. So the point is, just by adding redsift.com, we are able to find all of these other identities through our identity monitoring feature. And what that will do is find more domains, subdomains, hosts, certificates in your environment, so long as they're connected by means of DNS. So specifically, we'll go through the different identities we see here and how we found them, okay? So the first thing we should understand is this particular feature is not, bulletproof per se. There can be false positives, but it's because of how things are configured in DNS. So this is a great example, the first one found, right? So what we're saying is we found this identity. It's linked to Squarespace, okay? And we have this type column, and we'll go through this. But basically, by means of public DNS information, metadata, who is data, SOA data, additional who is information, certificate data, we're able to find domains, hosts, subdomains, right? That will be associated with your environment. Now with Squarespace, technically, because we use Squarespace at some capacity, we found this identity, but this is one that we actually would not want to enable. Why? Because if we enable this identity, we're going to pull in every other domain and environment hosted associated with Squarespace. So we left this as an example to say, hey, we're going to find a lot of identities here, but you do need to have an understanding of your environment to figure out what you're actually going to enable. So this would be one that I'm not going to enable. Now, we know for these next few They're absolutely associated with our environment. We're familiar with them. We happen to know we own this domain. But the point is, what ASM does is it's going to look at all that different metadata and give you the opportunity to say, yes, you know what, that is me. Let me enable that, right? So we can go down the line here and enable all of these, again, for the purposes of doing a live demo, and it takes a few minutes for things to propagate. We've set some of this up ahead of time, right? But let's see, if we go back to our other account, refresh the page. So again, back to the initial account where I just added that one domain, Redshift, right? We've found our first identity. Now, by enabling this, we're actually going to see additional identities pop up, which now coming back to the other account, ready? ASM Search Demo. The purpose of that exercise there was to show you by enabling that one identity, we've now populated the rest of these, okay? So the point is, really great way to be able to find additional assets in your estate that you would normally need to have, some spreadsheet of all of your domains, right? And if you think about it, if you're in an enterprise environment, maybe there's a parent company with many subsidiaries, right? Well, as long as they're connected by means of DNS, our ASM solution is going to be able to find all those different sister companies, acquisitions, partners, right? But ultimately, you do have to do a little bit of due diligence here. Here's another one, right? Intuit. Obviously not us on some certificate level. There is an association, but we don't want to enable this because we're going to be pulling in all this other data, right? So the main point, really powerful. You can find tons of different information, but you ultimately need to be what I'll say, attentive and responsible for what you're enabling. So what this does when we've enabled the hosts, those identities, is we're going to find all these additional hosts. Jorge, I'll pass it back over to you to just kind of run through, the additional parts here.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm about to share my screen. Just bear with me. Good. Now, the purpose of that identity, so here, if we go back, so I'm going to be swapping in between the same two accounts. But effectively, once you enable the identities, and there are other ways of also discovering hosts, but the main one is around identities, because identities is nothing but the metadata that exists in the public domain. And when I say public domain, I mean on your DNS, domain registrations, et cetera, et cetera. So what will end up happening is that we'll have a section within the solution that it talks about discover hosts. Most likely, in that case, it would be domains, but in some cases, it could be also subdomains that probably have metadata associated with other subdomains. So it is almost like a circle that we try to run from that perspective. We discover identities, then we come to discover hosts. By discovering new hosts and starting monitoring, right now we're not monitoring everything. As you can see here, it's in some pending status. But by discovering these new hosts, then we then are going to discover every subdomain under each in one of these domains. Then by discovering the subdomains, now we can have new identities. That's why when we were looking at these identities, some of them are based on the DNS, because by adding the monitoring on subdomains, and we may find identities are related to DNS. Something that we haven't that we don't have here is MX records. It's also a very good way of linking hosts between each other. So in your organization, you might have registered a new domain, or created a new subdomain that is not easy to relate to you. But for ease of configuration, you configured an MX record that you're already using on another known domain, so we can make that relationship as well. And when I say we, what I really mean is the machines, the models that we have behind the solution that do this in an automated way. So it's no one's job to do all of the discovery. The job it is only to enable, like Tom was describing, to enable these identities so that we can do we can let know the machines what to do. But after doing that, then at some point I would have host as well here. And as you can see, I can filter this by idle. But as you can see, that means that these are subdomains that belong to that domain, that redshift.com domain that we've just added, that Tom just added. And this is all, what I'm showing on the JM demo is happening live as we speak, right? So I click on all of those. Then I can click on Start Monitoring. And then from that moment onwards, we're going to use the metadata that is based on this subdomains to probably create more identities. And then the cycle kind of starts again. So I discover new identities. That's probably going to take a few minutes, so we probably won't see them yet. I discover new identities. I enable those that are relevant to me. And then I come here to discover hosts. And I enable the new hosts. And then I discover new identities. Sorry, I discover the new hosts. Then I come to host. Then I discover the subdomains of those new hosts, of those new domains. And then I discover more identities. So I go back and I start again and again. Now, if you had a keen eye, so I'd like to describe another way of discovering hosts. If you had a keen eye, these domains that I discover here, actually, I haven't really enabled the identity on this side. Sorry, I haven't discovered all of them because of the identity that I enabled on this side. It says keyword. So you can also, we own the OnDMARC brand, right? So it's part of our suites, and I'm sure we've done some demos around that as well. But you can also put keywords of brands that you are sure you own. If they're unique to you, because this is the key part, if they're unique to you, then you can add it as a keyword, and then you can discover more hosts. Now, probably because sometimes some organizations like to, for instance, would like to just hide their identity for GDPR purposes or whatever other privacy purposes, to hide their identities on their domain registration, on their certificates, or on their DNS. So you can work with the keywords to discover more. Or if you're doing a new acquisition, you can also do it like that. Some customers have used this for those purposes, and obviously that would be a matter for another demo. But right now it would be around how we're discovering why. So after we do this, so I can just go ahead, select all of those, click on Own. Now there's an extra step on this one, and the reason why we don't do it automatically is because, number one, some organizations just want to monitor everything. Some organizations are split into regions, into departments, so probably they wanted to keep it separate. And just in case there's a false positive as well. So we click on Monitor, click on Add. Now, when we look at domains, obviously all of those are added there. We have the list of subdomains, on domains, etc. But then when I add that, then very likely in a few minutes, I don't know if it's already enabled, but in a few minutes, we'll have idle hosts, which are the subdomains that are associated with those domains themselves. So from that perspective, again, if I enable the wrong identities, then obviously I'm going to have more noise, but I still have the fallback of they go into discovered mode. They don't really, we don't really start the assessment until we do that step that I did just a moment ago. And so that's obviously a backup just in case we didn't mean to enable a certain identity.
And to Jorge's point, this is really great too, because, you're probably constantly rolling out, new infrastructure at some capacity. You register a new domain, there's an acquisition, right? I mean, this is going to be the solution that is going to, find this on your behalf. So long as there are means of different, the metadata we mentioned, Jorge mentioned MX records, I mentioned SOA, certificate data, right? So you can think of this as really continuously updating your estate. I mean, most environments are going to be dynamic. I mean, they're going to be changing at some capacity. Some environments larger than others. It really depends. It's unique to your situation. But Jorge made a good point of coming back to the identities tab, because things can continue to populate as more identities are found by means of DNS metadata.
Correct. So in this case, in the couple of minutes that we were talking, then we discover a few more subdomains, again, related to the domains that we've just added. Not all of them will have subdomains. Some of those domains that we have there are for protection purposes and not in use. But I do the exercise now here, and in this case, I just say start monitoring, and then I'll start monitoring those now. And then, as you can see, this is a continuous and automated process that happens in the background. When I added those few and I clicked on added, then when it refreshed, I had 66 more to add. So I can just click on those 66, and that's it for now. But again, and then I go back to see if there are more identities. Now, as you can see, we have more identities. Some of them I wouldn't enable, like the GitHub or Giant Panda, etc. But maybe this one over here in the who is registrant, I will enable, and then that probably means that in a few minutes I go back to discover hosts, and then there are more. I enable them. Then I go to hosts. I enable the subdomains associated related to those domains, and I carry on. And that's about it for it's a quick session that we had planned for today, but we believe that it is important to understand why we start from how we discover your domains, and the process that if you were to embark in this journey, you would need to follow in order to make sure that you discover all of your hosts. Obviously, the starting point is always what you know about your own environment. So if you already know you have 20 domains, then you add the 20 domains, and then we have all of the metadata of those 20 domains and their subdomains. And from that moment onwards, then we can start that cycle that we just demonstrated to discover anything else that you didn't know about. Cool.
Excellent. Let's see if there's any questions.
Yep.
1 second. All right. Here, Jorge, I'll take this one.
Yep.
Can I delete unwanted identities? So yes, you can. I'll show that really quickly. Share my screen here. Okay, so here we go. All right, so on the identities page, in the same way you can enable, this is a good example where if I was actually building this account out, I probably would, delete this. We kept Squarespace in here to just show that, hey, you do need to be mindful of what you're enabling, but we could actually just delete that, so it's not, going to be enabled by accident.
Cool.
What happens if I accidentally enable an undesired identity? Here, Jorge, I'll let you field that one.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I'm sharing my screen now. Good. So let's just say I add this one over here that is very generic. Anybody can use the same. If I then enable that, obviously I can just disable it. So I can just right now, and if I realize about it in the moment, I just say disabled, and that's about it, right? That's very easy. But I guess the question is probably more around what happens if, I enable it and then I start discovering hosts that I wasn't meant to discover. In those cases, then what I do is the moment they show up here, that's pending, there's no assessment being done. So in other words, these 3 domains that we just discovered are not going to be added here to the list yet. They're not part of that list. And we can we can do a quick test. Any of these. If I copy this one and try to find it here, then it doesn't show up in any combination whatsoever, etc. So it's not there, right? So that's important bit, because at this moment it's not really creating any assessment for you, and hence it's not creating any unnecessary or unwanted information. So what I would do is, in this case, okay, this is actually matching the identity that I did not want to enable. Then the first thing is select all of those, and then you say here delete, and they go out of the list. And then in whichever order, it doesn't matter, but then you would go here and then you say, okay, I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to disable it. Or you can go ahead straight and delete it as well. You can delete the identity, and that will disable it as well.
Yeah, and Jorge summed this up well during the demo too. I mean, that discovered host page is going to be your almost your staging environment for selecting what you really do want it to monitor. So if you did enable an identity that you didn't mean to, that's kind of your fail safe. And then to Jorge's point, deleting them from there. Okay, we answered that. Okay, could I manage this via APIs? So yes. What you should know, and you might have picked up on for our other webinars, is ultimately our ASM solution and really all of our products are built API first. I mean, everything you can do in the UI and more can be done with the API. So we have customers with literally tens of thousands of domains, right, to programmatically handle identities when there's constantly new things being registered. That's what they're hitting, is the identities API endpoint. So the answer is yes, absolutely can manage identities with the API. Let's see if we have anything else. I think that we answered that. Cool. Yeah, I think that's it for questions. What we would say is, if anyone who's joined today is just interested in, seeing their data and running through this, Jorge and I are happy to lead up a demo. You can reach out. How are we doing that? I think we have I think there might be a link in the registration perhaps, but ultimately we're happy to do a demo.
And it's in the presentation, I would say. So let me share my screen. Are you sharing your screen or me?
Go ahead, Jorge, if you have it. If you have that one up.
Yeah. So I think we have it here. Yeah, there we go. Right here. So if you go to that website, to Redshift / free assessment, then basically that would link to the relevant team in the region. It could as well be Tom or me, but effectively you'll get a free assessment. So literally, you give us how many domains you like. You can give us only one, and then we could prove the concept of how much else we can discover from the tool. And then we'll give you, not just around identities, but in general, we'll give you an assessment as to how your security and your configuration best practices is. So the purpose of our assessments is not so much of finding a vulnerability that is being exploited in a very specific moment. It's more about showing you how preventive you can be if you are continuously making an assessment on your attack surface in terms of the typical standards, typical standard configurations for your web hosting, for your email infrastructure, for your certificates as well. So if we're talking about email, how's your SPF configured? That affects how your DMARC policy is being applied. From your web hosting, how well your HTTPS connection is configured, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, redshift.com /free-assessment, and then we'll get in touch with you and we'll give you a free assessment.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jorge. All right, folks. Well, yeah, looking forward to potentially hearing from you and reviewing your environment and, yeah, showing what our ASM solution can do.
Right. Thank you. And we have tomorrow, by the way, Nadim, our colleague, before we go, just read a text that we have a live briefing on the subdo mailing exploit. Our solution ASM is perfectly equipped to prevent that from happening. In terms of the subdomain hijacking, this subdo mailing exploit is largely based on hijacking subdomains that have orphan CNAME records on the DNS. It's very difficult to know about them if you don't have a solution like ours, but it's very easy to fix once you know about it. So make sure you register for that as well. There's a link there. It's very hot right now. It's happening. As an anecdote, and this is a personal anecdote, we've been demoing this. We've been talking to customers around the importance of keeping a DNS free of issues, free of misconfigurations. And for me, not being a hacker and not being even I'm a sales engineer. I'm not developing stuff. I'm not hacking for any purpose whatsoever. And for me, looking at how easy it would be to hijack a subdomain, I always wondered, how come this is not being exploited yet? Because we hadn't heard much about it. Well, it turns out it was happening. It's been happening for a couple of years, to the point that today we're talking about around 5 million of phishing attempts per day. So make sure you register for that. It's very useful information, and hopefully you'll be able to check if you're affected for free. There's no need to be part of our infrastructure to know if you're exploited, but we have tools that we can probably talk about tomorrow in that respect. All right, having said that, thank you again. Thank you, Tom, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.